Welcome to the Sustain GRC podcast. I'm Ahmed Shawqi. My guest today is Shagen Ganason, Group Chief Audit Executive at Liva, one of the region's leading insurance groups serving more than 1.5 million customers across the GCC. He is a certified internal auditor who has led audit functions across 3 continents. And he works closely with the board and audit committee. He is also a technology-enabled audit specialist. And that's exactly why I wanted this conversation. Shagen, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, Ahmed.
Thank you. Before we dive into specific areas of the audit and risk processes, let me start broadly. As a chief audit executive, how do you see AI changing risk, audit, and compliance? And how is it changing your own work?
In a number of ways, I think. If you look at where audit is something that is very traditional. We've done this for, since 1940s and 50s and all that. But you find that a lot of those practices that we used to do in the past, it is still being done today. And there's nothing wrong with that. And that applies to risk as well. But there's a lot of new thinking around how do we identify risk and how do we identify controls and all that. And I think that's where, in my view, the profession hasn't actually caught up. So if you look at, give you a simple analogy, if you look at your phone, right, in 2015, where the new first standards came out, we probably had iPhone 4 or iPhone 3 or something like that. And you look at today, we've got iPhone 17. And even a phone itself, we have got multiple updates and security every few other months because, the risk changes, the security environment changes. And if you look at internal audit, so our first standard came out in 2015, 2013 or something like that. And the next revision came up in 2024. And between 2013 and 2024, nothing much changed. And if you look at the environment, the business that we are supposed to provide assurance over has changed multiple times and the risks have changed. So I think there is a clear case why we should be, looking at the developments around technology, developments around what, changes in the business to be able to make sure that we keep up to it. So that hasn't caught up. So I think that's the reason why I think it's quite important to make sure that the real world risks and technology and AI, it aligns with, traditional practices like, risk and audit.
And is there anything specifically that you are experimenting with now?
Quite a lot. So we're currently doing our 2027 audit plan. And so many of the CAEs will be starting about now or has already started. One of the things that we struggle with is changing our mindset from looking at an audit cycle to say that every function has to be done every 3 years, every 5 years, or whatever number of years. To me, the way that we're looking at it now is looking at what is currently top of mind. If you look at where I am in currently in the GCC, the geopolitical risk is highly a hot topic that we're dealing with at the moment. If you look at our audit universe, none of those things talk about geopolitics. And so if you were to follow the traditional way of doing audits, there's very high likelihood that some of those key things that impact the risks the business are facing is not being looked at. So we started identifying how do we change this around. So we spoke with a number of people in other parts of the world who starts from an ERM perspective. We spoke to our board, we spoke to our audit committee to understand what are the things that you want assurance on. How do we provide you the assurance that the risks are being properly mitigated? So we had a lot of ideas. And so we started from a different perspective. So we started from the ERM register. So currently, I'm also overseeing the risk function, so I've got a little bit of understanding of how the risk works. So we put those two things together. So our audit plan starts from a risk perspective and say that how do we provide assurance? And then you look at what is changing within the business. If you look at February 28, when the first conflict started and where it is right now, and every few months things change. The market changes, the demand changes, the conflict changes, the position of where we are in also changes. So what we use is we use an AI to understand where the risk is and where the risks are moving towards. So if you look at a flow from, beginning of the year to now, you can see some of those changes that has happened. And so you say that all these changes are happening. So how does that inform the audits? How do we make sure that the business knows what it's trying to achieve. And from an objective perspective, how do you overlay the risks with the objectives, and where are the common areas that we can provide assurance on? So that's the point that we started looking at. And then there is also other things like, planning, for example, for next year. If you just look at Google and search for risks to the insurance industry in 2027, it'll give you probably 20, 30 articles. We can still look at all those things. And from a human perspective, it'll probably take weeks, months, maybe, and probably very likelihood that you miss a few things. So we use another tool to make sure that we gather all this public information, and then we put together with our own strategic objectives and how those things actually interlay. So it gives you a very strong position when we go to the audit committee to say that we're doing X, Y, and Z, because this is aligned with A, B, and C from the business perspective and how they align. It gives confidence to the board, the audit committee. We're actually looking at the right areas. We also give confidence to the regulators that we are actually identifying the right risk for the business. And also gives confidence to ourselves that we are not wasting time looking at something that's historical, but we're looking at something which is forward thinking. So that's some of the things that we're looking at right now. It's still very much experimental because there is no fixed way of doing it, but that's the start.
I'm taking notes. As the last statement, it should be highlighted. It gives you confidence. It gives the audit committee, the regulator, real confidence. It gives you a strong position, and that you are not also looking at historical data, but you are more forward looking. So that's for in planning specifically. That's really a great use case for AI today.
So there's a lot of times that we look at planning, and most of the time we look at historical data. If you look at audit planning, I mean, you have been a CAE, you find that, you look at the last 3 years audits that you have covered, combined assurance, you look at where the risks were, you look at what are the findings that you had in the last 3 years. But those things are historical, right? So we also need to look at the forward looking at for the next 3 years, what it's going to look like. It's difficult. I acknowledge that, but it is not difficult for the tools that we have right now. I mean, I give you an example: regulators in the Middle East. A lot of the regulators they take their learnings from what's happening in Europe. So if you understand what's happening in Europe, you can more or less know that these are the things that is going to happen in the Middle East in the next foreseeable future. So if you do your risk scanning, not just within the Middle East, you look at risk scanning, what's happening in Australia, what's happening in the US, what's happening in Europe. And if you put all those things together, you can more or less know what is going to happen in the Middle East. So that gives you a forward sensing view of what do we need to have in place right now in order for us to be able to provide assurance as what's going to happen in the future. So I think looking forward is an area that we need to start changing our mindset. And don't get me wrong, I think the history, the past is very, very important, but it is not the only way of looking at it. I think we should spend, a majority of our times forward looking. I mean, if you're driving in a car at 120 kilometers an hour, your eyes will be in what's in front of you rather than what's behind. You still be looking at your rearview mirrors. You're still looking at your side mirrors, but 80% of your time you're looking at what is in front of you. And planning is no different.
Yeah. A number of things to unpack there. So risk scanning over historical coverage, moving from cyclical audits to more continuous intelligence. Also, I remember you say that Audit Universe should be a completeness check, not the starting point. I think that relates now to what you said. What has to change also from your point of view? Is there anything has to change in practice for that to happen?
In practice, the starting point shouldn't be audit universe. So we still have an audit universe, and we should have an audit universe. Our audit universe is basically to make sure that we haven't missed anything. So if you're starting from your ERM and looking at what is in front of you rather than what's behind you, you'll be identifying a lot of areas that we should be looking at from a risk perspective. These are the areas that can provide the greatest assurance. But if you put that against your audit universe, you know what are the things that we should be looking at, but we have missed out for whatever reason. Because it is not in the next 3 years, because what is in front of you is not something that you can see. What's going to happen in the next 3 months, you don't know. When we were planning for 2026 audits, we knew that there is a risk being in the region. Geopolitical risk is a risk, but nobody in their right mind would have thought the conflict is going to happen, right? So you would not have identified this as an area that you want to look at. So making sure that you have got your audit universe there to cross-check to say that you have not missed anything, I think is very, very crucial. So it has got a place in our planning cycle, but it is not the place that you start from. And I think that's where the difference is.
You and I had also recently debated about most auditors are still using AI as a chatbot. Just ask a question and get service answer, kind of. But agentic AI is a different thing. From what you have experimented and built and used and tested so far, how does it change the risk and audit work?
People find it very difficult to work with AI. I mean, that's across the world. People use AI as a search engine. And I think that's very, very wrong, because that is probably the tip of the iceberg. And I think a lot of people's mindset will have to change to say that AI it's another, I would call it an intelligent intern. So basically, intern is, you hire somebody and you give him a task or her a task, and she'll be able to do whatever that is being given to her. The other thing is, you don't ask the person to just go and look for which is the best hotel that you're going to, or which is, what is the current risks in this kind of environment. But use the AI, the agentic AI, more as a partner in audit. So I think that's the mind shift that we need to take. I mean, if you ask, a lot of the conferences that you and I have been to, one of the frequent questions that always come up is that, AI is going to replace auditors. And I think that is an absolute rubbish. And I don't think seriously AI is ever going to replace auditors. But AI will replace the auditors who don't know how to use AI. Because I think that's where the difference is. If you know how to take the advantage of the intelligence that artificial intelligence has, then you will never be out of a job, because you know how to use it to your advantage, because it frees up a lot of our time and doing those mundane tasks like researching 20 risk reports that comes out in the next 2027. That'll take a lot of time. But if you got an AI to be able to do it and synthesize it and give you a summary of what you should be looking at, how that actually links together with your strategic objectives, that is something a human can do, but it's going to take a lot more time. So being able to identify the areas that you can take advantage of technology to be able to help you expedite what you're trying to do, and also being able to do things that you and I would finding it very difficult to do, finding patterns, especially with a whole bunch of data. Those are the kind of things that AI is able to do. So I think taking advantage and knowing what the difference is between a search engine and natural AI is very, very crucial.
That's amazing. I mean, you also called it orchestrating intelligence in your writing earlier, not just work. So let's specifically here focus on the chief audit and the risk officers side. On a Monday morning, what is the chief audit executive doing that they were not doing a year ago? What are they doing now? What are you doing now that you were not doing a year or 6 months ago with AI?
So when I say orchestrating intelligence, to me, I look at the AI is actually one of my team members. So when you come in on a Monday morning, what I'll be looking at is, what has happened the last week, what has happened over the weekend, and those things will be available to me for me to make decisions. And looking at those trends and looking at the patterns that comes out of it, I can tell my investigation manager to look at, hey, these are the areas they should be focusing on, because this is something that has come up. Or I can pass this information to my analytics team to look at, how do you put this into a KPI, or how do you put into a visualization tool to be able to tell the business that these are the things that we should be looking at. So if you look at it from 6 months ago or a year ago, these things will not be available. You would be asking somebody to actually do all these things for you on a Monday morning, whereas now these things are available because your AI team member has already done those things for you while you were having your weekend. So I think that's where the difference is. And I think the other difference is that when you come in on a Monday morning, you are looking at the stuff that you do is more around decision making, around how do you tackle this, or how do you interpret the results that you get? How are you going to have this communication, or how are you going to communicate this with the CEO? How are you going to communicate with the regulator? How are you going to communicate this with your board member? That's are the kind of things that you'll be starting to look at. Whereas in the past, those are the things that you'll be looking at on a Friday rather than a Monday, because those things are not yet available. So I think it's just compressing the things that you're supposed to be doing at a much earlier pace, that you have a lot more time in your hands. Doesn't mean that you're free, but it gives you a space for you to be looking at things that which you either did not think about in the past or didn't have time to think about in the past. And I think that's the change that's happening right now. And it's not just me. I mean, my team members are the same thing. My human team members, utilize the AI team members' skills for them to be able to do the job much faster. I think that's the shift that is happening across the world.
Okay, it's processing and servicing thousands of insights in seconds or minutes. But that also now the skill will become deciding which ones really matter. Do you think the profession is ready for that? And do you think that many professionals are ready for that?
That's a very interesting question. I've spoken to hundreds, not thousands of auditors and CAEs around the world, and a lot of people are not comfortable letting go what they have done in the past. And the reason is simple. I know what I've done in the past and I've got the skills to be able to deal with it. I don't know what is going to happen in the future, and I don't know whether I have the skills to be able to do that. So that's where the dilemma is, to say that, am I ready to have a new team member who actually knows more than I do? And I think, one of my managers I used to work with many years ago, he used to say that as a CEO, and he said that, I want to surround myself with intelligent people. If I know everything, then I don't need a team to actually manage the business. I acknowledge that I don't know these things, and that's the reason why I've got a CFO who is highly intelligent, far more experienced than I am. I've got a business manager who knows the business far more than I do. And in your job as a CEO is to actually orchestrate all these different intelligence, and that's what I was coming to. So similar to a CAE, and your job is not just to manage the function. Your job is to understand where the strength and the weaknesses are in each of those places and try to build that bridge. And I think that's where we're getting to. But to be honest, I don't know whether the profession is ready as yet, but I don't think we should stop to find out. And we just should, leap into it like what we did. And you will make mistakes, no doubt about that. I mean, we've made many mistakes at on. So we started the ERM plan last year, and we knew it was experimentation, and we got it wrong in some of the areas. And if you look at the plan that we had at the beginning of the year and the plan that we had at the end of the year was completely different. But we learned from it. So if you don't put your foot into it and start developing these things, you'll find that you're never going to get started.
So it's a journey. We have to experiment and learn from it and adapt. I believe that's the conclusion and advice that you're leaving. So let's make it even more practical and concrete. Chief Audit Executive wants to move to continuous risk scanning for 2027. And I think that's learning and building on the shoulders of giants like you and what you are currently doing and what you have been experimenting with. What should they stop doing first? It is, I think, from what you said, they stop like they need to change. They need to have that mindset of change. But I need you to be more specific. What should they stop doing first, and what should they start doing now?
I would probably say stop looking behind you. It's very natural for us to always look at what we have done in the past and learn from it to go forward. I mean, you need to know where you are before you can know where the next step is. But I would encourage people to look forward and look ahead and then confirm what you have got based on what information they already have right now. So what I would probably stop looking at my historical data as a start. I'll be looking at what is in front of me, where the organization is going, what it's trying to achieve, what are the pain points for the business, and then we look at what we have done in the past and see whether there are areas where it overlaps, and then we can provide gaps. And I think that's a good starting point.
Okay, as we conclude, what advice would you like to leave with internal auditors, risk professionals in general?
Don't be afraid of technology. Don't be afraid of AI. And there's always, guardrails that we need to put in place, in terms of data privacy and a whole lot of things which is common sense. One of the things I would encourage people to do is make sure you've got your AI governance in place. And because technology is moving so fast, people start using it even before the governance is put in place. So make sure you've got a AI governance. Your team knows what and how to use AI responsibly. That's the fundamental things that I would suggest. Second thing is that once you've got those things in place, experiment with it. Always double check, but experiment with it, because you don't know what the capabilities are until you actually try it. The more you delve into artificial intelligence and technology and AI, you find that there are so many other things that you can develop from it. You can even, a tool that you just told me that your firm is doing, you put in all these things into place and it tells you what areas you need to look at, what audits you need to do, what is your scope. Those kind of things I've never heard of. So those are the kind of things that's possible. So, likewise in the risk space, if you put in your ER and your risk register and tells you what are the top 5 things I need to look at and how does it align with my business objectives, it'll give you in an instant that these are the things you should be looking at, then confirm based on history. Are these correct? Are these things that need to fine tune? So there's never a perfect answer and you never get it right. That I can tell you from my personal experience. You always get it wrong. But the thing is, you always learn something different, something new. And I think that's where the value of using technology is for risk professionals, audit professionals, compliance professionals.
You highlighted a very important one, AI governance. And AI governance is a difference between, the gap between AI potential and AI failure is AI governance. So it's really critical because AI development now is going at the speed of, Ferrari, while the governance is moving at a bicycle, running on a bicycle brakes.
Yeah, that's a very good analogy.
There's a big disconnect between how organization are coping up with that and filling this gap. I think we might need to have a separate session about AI governance, something really passionate about.
Ahmed, to be honest with you, it's not just the companies, it's not just auditors, it's also the regulators. I mean, the thing is, you know how slow regulation actually takes place. By the time the regulation keeps pace with what's going on, the technology is like 3-4 times ahead of it. So even the regulation is behind that. So from a governance perspective, we auditors or governance professionals need to make sure that our governance is actually keeping pace as much as we can with the pace of technology, because even the regulators can't keep up with it.
Again, thank you so much. This has been an insightful session, concise and sweet. Thank you. And I look forward to the second one.
Thank you very much, Ahmed. It was a pleasure.